Good afternoon, Twins fans. Welcome to another week. It is Monday, and it is a case of the Mondays kind of day. Hopefully, you're having a great day. But my name is Seth Stills of Twins Daily and twinsdaily.com, welcoming you to another edition of Twins Spotlight. Today being the 22nd of November. This is episode 8 of off season 2, episode 43 total. So, with that, let's talk about our guest tonight on Twins. Oh no, I forgot to fill this out. No, maybe it's Saints Spotlight today. And our guest is their Vice President and Director of Broadcasting and Media Relations, Sean Aronson. Looking great in these pictures that I happened to find online. Let's bring in the star of our show today, Sean Aronson. Sean, how are you?
I'm good, Seth. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Had to show a couple of pictures making you look good and stuff.
I'm not sure either one of those make me look good. One was from a second chance prom night that we did here. I think it was 2019, and then the other was one of the only times I've ever dressed up for Halloween. Halloween was my least favorite holiday of all time, and I think that was from 2020, I believe. We did a little thing out here and just to drive some revenue, and I was selling tickets that day, and so I had to find a costume, and that's what I found.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, do you still have it? That's the
I
big
do
question.
actually. It is still in my closet because I cannot stand Halloween so much that if I ever was forced to wear something again, I don't want to go out and have to buy anything. So I've got something on hand if I need it.
Completely understandable. All right, let's start way back at the beginning. You grew
Yeah.
up in Los Angeles. I assume a Dodgers fan. I know you've talked in the past about being able to listen to the likes of the legendary Vince Scully. Talk a little bit about growing up in baseball, and yeah, maybe where the love of baseball came to you first.
Yeah, I grew up in just outside of the heart of Los Angeles, about 35 miles north in the San Fernando Valley. For anyone familiar with the area, I grew up in Northridge, California, and uh, look, you grow up as a Dodger fan. You grow up listening to arguably the greatest broadcaster to ever live in Vin Scully, and he helps making you fall in love with the game very easy. The stories, the descriptions, the history. It was great to be able to live in that area, listen to a guy like that. And I grew up playing the game. I realized early on at a young age that I was never going to be good enough to go anywhere. You also realize at a certain point that you're not growing anymore. There aren't too many 5-5 star athletes out there. There aren't many 5-5 mediocre athletes out there. So I realized early on that the professional ranks was not going to be for me. I peaked out, if you will, my junior year of high school playing baseball. I do my claim to fame. My final high school hit was off a future major leaguer who actually I think spent like 12 years in the major leagues, John Garland, who played for a number of different teams,
Yeah.
but he played for Kennedy High School. And my final high school hit in my very last game was off of John Garland. So that's my minor claim to fame, if you will. But yeah, and so I always knew that I was going to be on this path of being a broadcaster. I knew it like 8, 9, 10 years old that this is what I wanted to do, and just to put my head down ever since, and that's been the goal. And here I am now, 22 years in the business, going on my 16th year with the St. Paul Saints as a broadcaster.
Well, and that was kind of my next step as a broadcast person, knowing that that's kind of what you wanted to do. What was it about the University of Colorado that kind of made that the choice for you, as opposed to maybe a more local school?
Yeah, I was dead set on not staying in California. Not I look, California will always be my home, despite the fact that I've been out of California longer than I was in it. I lived in California for 18 years. I'm nearing living in Minnesota almost as long as I lived in California. But all my friends, family are still in California. It will always be home to me. But I didn't want to stay there. I wanted to experience. I wanted to go outside of the realms of California. I think the only California school I applied to was Cal State Northridge, which was like a mile down the road. It was like the backup school of all backup schools, just in case I didn't get in anywhere. But look, I joke about this all the time. I graduated from high school in '95. there was no Google back then. You couldn't Google best broadcasting schools out there, and then 10 of them show up. Syracuse and
Yeah.
Northwestern and Arizona State and a number of them that are out there. Like that didn't pop up. You walked into the guidance counselor's office and you said, "Look, this is what I want to do," and she pointed to a stack of books in the corner and said, "Have at it." I promise you, I never once opened one of those books. So I just started applying around. I had applied to the University of Georgia. I applied to Colorado. I applied to Washington. I applied to the University of Arizona. And I think that was it. And then CSUN. I got in everywhere except for the University of Washington. I'm still bitter about that they rejected me. But I went to Oregon was the other place I went to. I applied to and got in. I went to Colorado and visited. I had a cousin that taught there, and just absolutely fell in love with the campus. I thought it was just beautiful. The area was gorgeous. And then my second trip was to Oregon, and I thought, well, I'm dead set on going to Colorado. And I went to Oregon, and Eugene was just, I mean, it was beautiful. But I decided to go to Colorado, and I was thankful I did. I had 4 of the greatest years of my life there. I always tell people that if there was one place I could move back to tomorrow outside of California, in which I've lived, and I've lived in 5 states, I moved back to Colorado tomorrow. I absolutely loved it. It is a beautiful state. Boulder is an amazing city, and I loved my time there. Now, having said that, it was not a broadcasting school. I majored in journalism with an emphasis on broadcasting, but play-by-play broadcasting was not something that it offered. It has since reshaped its journalism curriculum, and there is some play-by-play that is involved, but it's still not known as a broadcasting school. But I had a great 4 years there.
And then after college, I think you went out to Pennsylvania for a couple of years.
Yeah, I did it. I did an internship actually in Colorado Springs. I remember after I was done in college, and I did no play-by-play in college. I didn't do 1 second of play-by-play. I wasn't even on the radio. Like I wasn't part of campus radio or anything like that. But again, this is always what I was going to do. And I think like this last semester of my senior year, the girl that I was dating, her brother played high school baseball. So I just grabbed a tape recorder and started like broadcasting games into a tape recorder just so I had something. And when I graduated college, I was like, all right, well, someone's going to give me a job now. That's the way this works. Kids, that is not the way it works, just to let everybody know. And so I started calling around to minor league baseball teams. And I remember calling a team in New York, and I cannot remember what team it was. And I mean, I can't remember who I talked to. I don't know if it was the general manager, the AGM, the media relations director. I have no idea. But he said to me, he said, why do you want to move all the way out here just for an internship? And I thought, well, what a ridiculous question that is, because this is always what I wanted to do. I'd move to Timbuktu for a job. So that got me thinking, all right, well, are there any teams in my backyard here in Colorado? And Colorado Springs, the Sky Sox, which at the time was the AAA affiliate of the Rockies. And I reached out to him and I said, look, I've just graduated from the University of Colorado. This is what I want to do. Do you have anything? And all they had was a media relations internship. And I did an interview on the phone, and they offered me the position, and I took it, and I worked my rear end off for 9 months. It started in January, ended in September. I was driving 90 miles each way because I still lived in Boulder to Colorado Springs in the off season because we were doing sales and stuff like that. I'd get up at 6, leave my house at 6:30, get to the ballpark at 9. We were there until 8 o'clock at night because from 6 to 8 we sold these like undated ticket books. And I'd turn around and drive home and get home at 9:30 because no traffic at that hour. And I'd get up the next day and do it all over again. And so I learned a lot. And then in like late July, the general manager was so impressed with everything that I was doing that they offered me 3 innings on the broadcast a couple of weeks from that point. Dan Karcher, who was the longtime broadcaster for the Colorado Springs Sky Sox, had heard about it and said, look, we're going to give you 3 innings. And he stayed home on the night that they were going to give me the 3 innings. I was going to do it with the number 2 guy, and I was going to get the middle 3 innings. And it rained, and we got rained out, and which is foreshadowing for my life in minor league baseball. And so I was so devastated, but he came back the next day and he said, look, we promised you 3 innings on the broadcast, and we'll give it to you. They had a doubleheader that day, and I did an inning of game one and 2 innings of game two. It was the Sky Sox against the Iowa Cubs. And so it took me 21 years to come back around to become a AAA broadcaster and broadcast a game against the Iowa Cubs again this year. But it was great. I tell people this all the time. It was 3 of the greatest innings I've ever done in my life, not because I was great, but because they were the first 3 I ever did. And that feeling that you get, starting quote unquote your career that way. And that led me, as you mentioned, to Allentown, Pennsylvania. The general manager with the Allentown Ambassadors, a team that is no longer in existence, reached out to the team in Colorado Springs because he was an intern there 10 years prior to that. And he said, look, I'm looking for a broadcaster media relations guy. Do you have anyone? And they said, we've got the guy for you. And I got hired pretty much sight unseen. And it was 2 of the worst years of my life in Allentown. It was awful. It was a terrible experience. It was a horribly run organization. As a matter of fact, a year after I left, they folded. They went belly up. The owner was not a nice person. But I tell this to people all the time. You have to understand what you don't want in this business to find out what you do want in this business. And it's sort of like what minor league baseball players have been going through for a long time. And now things are shifting with, housing starting to be paid and, now getting a little bit more money, although I think we can all agree they're still vastly and grossly underpaid. But you have to understand what you don't want before you can understand what you do want. And that was the case. And from Allentown, Pennsylvania, I landed the job in Fort Myers, Florida.
And that is the voice of Sean Aronson. He is the voice of the St. Paul Saints, the Twins AAA affiliate. If you're watching live on Twins Daily Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, please feel free to participate by asking a question if you'd like, and we'll get to those. I want to talk just a little bit here to give Sean just a break for a second.
Remember, Seth, I'm a broadcaster. I can go on for 3 hours without anyone interrupting me. But you do your thing. That's all right.
That's why I told you beforehand. I have like 2 questions ready for you here, and I figure we'll go an hour and a half. But no, I think your point about not necessarily and maybe needing to experience some of the bad to know what you want. I mean, I don't work in the baseball industry. I don't work in broadcasting. Now I'm a writer, but I've been various things. In fact, in college, I changed my major 3 or 4 times, and I've had 3 or 4 different positions and found something now that I like, that I think suits my skills, and I think I'm fairly content with. So that's part of the journey, and it's good to hear that it's other industries, because I think a lot of people might look at what you're doing and, you work for a baseball team, and think it's just the greatest job ever. But I want to tell people, I got to a game at St. Paul this year, and I was there about 2:00 for a 7:00 game, and Sean was like working, like he was out in the seats putting things up and moving around and everything. So I want to jump into that just a little bit, but I do want to ask you about your time in Fort Myers.
Sure.
Obviously, Fort Myers has been the location of the Twins spring training, I think, since '91.
Yep.
And obviously, they've made vast improvements since then. You were there from 2002 to 2006 or 7?
03 to 06. So my baseball seasons were the 03 season, 04, 05, and 06 seasons. And there was a lot of talent that rode through Fort Myers in my 4 years there. My first year was Joe Mauer's half season in Fort Myers. I think it was Mauer. I think Jason Kubel was on that team. Jesse Crane was on that team. Twins fans, I mean, you have to be a fairly diehard Twins fan to remember this guy, J.D. Durbin. I'm not sure if he ever reached the majors, but he was one of my favorite guys because his nickname was, I think, self-proclaimed nickname was the real deal.
Yeah.
But just one of the best personalities that you'll ever find. And it was great. I loved my I saw so much talent in 03 specifically. But in my Ryan Howard went through there. David Wright went through there. One of the greatest players that I ever saw play in my 4 years there was Hanley Ramirez. He was head and shoulders above everybody else. He was so much better than everybody else. And that was the fun thing about that. Again, I'd spent 2 years in Allentown, which I didn't mention was an independent league, and not Lehigh Valley, what they are now is separate team, different iteration. But So I'd never been in affiliated ball before outside of my internship in Colorado Springs, but to watch these guys on a nightly basis, and the talent that was there and the prospects that went through. And I was still learning the business too. Again, I spent 2 years in Allentown just sort of getting my feet wet, but I learned a lot in my 4 years in Fort Myers. And, there were just some talented guys. I mean, Tommy Watkins, the mayor, of Fort Myers, that he gets, Trevor Plouffe, who's from my hometown in Northridge, my backyard. He was with me. There was a lot of talent, and you got to know those guys and get to know their personalities and who they were. One of the nicest guys I ever met out there was Jake Maurer. Everybody talks about Joe. Jake Maurer is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He actually sent me an email a handful of years ago when we got into the new ballpark. And then, like, I think a year later or something like that, the Star Tribune, I don't know how long ago it was now, 4 or 5 years ago, the Star Tribune did an article on me. And I don't know how Jake stumbled upon it because he was managing somewhere in the Twin system, but he stumbled across it and sent me an email just saying, "Hey, glad things are going well for you. Read the article. Congratulations." And I hadn't talked to Jake since, whatever. I don't know. It'd been quite a few years, but I mean, that's just the type of guy that he is. So it was great. One of my best stories from my time in Fort Myers, and this shows the ignorance that I had. So Maurer was with us for a half a year and lights the Florida State League on fire. I think he hit 344, had a home run and 40 some odd RBIs. No surprise to any Twins fan. His one home run was opposite field that barely cleared the left field wall just inside the pole. But he gets called up after the All-Star game, and Jim Rance, the legendary Jim Rance, is in the clubhouse with Joe as Joe is cleaning out his locker, as he's getting promoted to Double-A. And I go in there just to congratulate Joe, and I see Jim, and I said, and we had won the first half, which, again, no surprise with the talent we had. So we were already in the playoffs. And I looked at Jim and I said, "So are you sending Joe back for the playoffs, 3 months from now?" And Jim Rance looks at me and he says, "We're not here to win championships. We're here to develop ball players." And it was at that moment I realized I'm never winning a championship here in Fort Myers ever. Like, this is never going to happen. And the funny thing was, I mean, I got out of there in 06. Their first championship was not until like years later. I mean, it took them forever to win a title there. And so, like, that was the way it was. I didn't realize that. I was like, look, we're in the playoffs. Like, you should want to win a championship. And it wasn't that way. And of course, it took until 2019, with the independent St. Paul Saints before I ever won my first championship as a broadcaster. And, my first year as a broadcaster was 2001. So it took forever for me to finally get a title.
Yeah. Oh, but then the transition, I mean, working with the people in the Twins organization is probably nice.
Yeah.
But then you got the opportunity in St. Paul. Can you talk a little bit about how that came apart? I mean, I want to say the ownership group was the same or something.
Yeah, you're right. So my predecessor, Chris Atterbury, who's been the pre and post and fill-in guy for the Twins as long as I've been in St. Paul. So my first year was 07. So he gets the job with the Twins. And so that left an opening here in St. Paul. And wisely, because this ownership group is smart, they did not open up the search, because if the second they open up the search, 700 people are applying for this job. Like, as soon as they they won't even have to pry my cold dead body out of my office. 100 people will apply for this job. It's now especially AAA, but it's St. Paul. It's one of the biggest markets. It's one of the most famous teams out there. But they kept it in-house to the teams they own. So I think it was myself, the broadcaster in Sioux Falls, the broadcaster in Charleston, and they may have opened. I don't know if Hudson Valley had a full-time guy at the time or not, but there were like 3 or 4 of us that were going for this job. And, spoiler alert, I got the job, but yeah, they opened it up to a handful of us, and I interviewed just like I would for any job. I think I went through 2 or 3 phone interviews. Derek Scher, who's still the general manager, Dan Lev, who was, I think, our head of corporate sales at the time, Eben Yeager, who was the assistant GM. I went through a few different interviews, and and I wound up getting the job, and I'm sure they've rued that decision ever since. But here I
The
am.
loyal.
Yeah, right. They have not been able to pry me away. So I've been in the ownership group now. This is my 20th year in the ownership group. The Mike Veck, Marv Goldklang, Bill Murray owned the Fort Myers Miracle. They sold it 3 or 4 years ago now. And then I've been here. This will be my 16th season in St. Paul.
And again, when I was there, I know that there was a documentary group working a story. I want to say either on the Saints or on Mr. Veck, and
Yeah.
obviously he's made a history, and his dad made a history of some interesting choices and decisions. Some have worked, some maybe not. But how much fun is it? I mean, there's this reputation. It's got to be just a blast seeing how things turn out.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the greatest thing that I can say about this ownership group and Mike especially is they don't micromanage. This is Mike's phrase: you hire the best people and you get out of their way. And that's what he's believed in. And I think we've got one of the best front offices in all of minor league baseball here in St. Paul. And the upper level, if you will, management, the senior staff has been around for a long time. Sierra Bailey on our promotions, Zane Heinzelman, who just got both of them just got promoted. Sierra now a vice president, Zane now our assistant general manager, Chris Schwab is an executive vice president. Derek's been here longer than I have. Tom Whaley was here from day one, left briefly to go work for the at the time the Devil Rays. So the core has been around a while, and then we infuse it with younger talent each and every year, and we just try to be as crazy as possible, and no line is too far to cross, because you can always bring it back a little bit when you're sitting in promotions meetings. As a matter of fact, we've got a promotions meeting this afternoon at 3:30, but we just try to throw out as many crazy ideas as possible and see what sticks. Now, not every idea is going to see the light of day, but you can start to see how ideas form and shape when you're sitting in meetings. And it comes from all over the place. It comes from very, very different areas. And there are some that we all suggest and they don't ever happen. The one that I want to have happen, and again, it's not a themed promotion, but a couple of years ago, I think it was 2019, for opening day, the Twins did a vest giveaway. And so I thought it would be funny if we gave away the sleeves to that vest on our opening day. So everyone gives out a jacket or a vest or whatever. I'm anti-vest. I don't understand the vest. So I thought that we would give the compliment, which would just be sleeves. That's all. You would walk in and you just get sleeves, which is a ridiculous giveaway because nobody gives away sleeves, right? You give away shirts or, coats or vests or whatever. I just want to give away sleeves. And I got overruled on that. So I'm still trying to make that happen. I'm hoping that the Twins do a vest giveaway this year again, and that we can find out who made those and ask if we get the sleeves for that vest and give away the vest so that people now have a full jacket that they can wear. So no, I think you muted yourself, Seth. There you go.
Every show. And I
Yeah,
know
that's
that
all right. It's okay.
one of our moderators at twinsdaily.com will point this out to me again because it happens every single episode once.
That's okay.
All I got to do is cough or clear my throat and I mute and then I forget. So
that's right.
By the way, we are talking to Sean Aronson of the St. Paul Saints broadcast team and a vice president and all kinds of really cool terms. We got a little bit of time here left with him. I do want to kind of push through some topics, but
sure.
One thing I was part of the initial press meeting with both Mr. Veck and the ownership and also the Twins ownership when they kind of announced the consolidation or the affiliation, I think is the word. And I thought it was funny that when asked about being able to do some of those funny things, I think it was Mr. Veck that made the comment of, we're not going to change too much. We'll just, ask for or beg for forgiveness from Dave St. Peter after the fact. So, any issues this last year? Anything you heard from the Twins about crazy stuff?
No, not at all. No, as a matter of fact, the Twins said this at that press conference, they want us to be us, right? They didn't get into this partnership to pull back on the reins. well, and I'm not going to hear from anyone from the Twins. Obviously, they're going to go to Derek or whatever. But we as a front office never once heard from the Twins on any promotions that we did. As a matter of fact, they 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 stood up for us. In one occasion, we did the Astra the Grouch, giveaway 2 years ago, and we had some left over and wanted to do that, um, and so they didn't stand in our way for doing that, right? I mean, they very easily could have, but they were like, hey, you guys be you go ahead and do that. That's what you want to do. So, um, it's so far in year one, and I can't imagine it's going to change over the next 9 years. It's a 10-year deal. I'm not saying this deal is going to end in 10 years, but it is a 10-year deal, so I can't speak further out than that. But I can't imagine anything's going to change over the next 9 years. All of a sudden they're going to step in and be like, well, you know what, you crossed the line, and that's the thing. I think that's what we're looking to do. Like, we want to find out what that line is. Go ahead, let someone call us and reprimand us. Like, we're going to push the envelope. And we may get reprimanded from time to time, but we have to be who we are. We have to be what the Saints are known for. And I get it. Like, people out there, before this all started, they were like, "Oh, you guys are going to be forced to change. The Twins are going to come in and they're going to, clean things up and blah blah blah." They've been the exact opposite. Like, there is nobody from the Minnesota Twins in this office, right? There is nobody, not on a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Not one time have they walked into this office to check the temperature of what's going on around here. Never. They don't. This is everybody that was in the front office on the independent side when the affiliation moved over are the exact same people. We're the same people in 2019, 2020, and then 2021. Same people. So, I mean, we won't let it change.
No, and that's a good thing. That's what the Saints have been for 25 years, 30 years?
This will be our 30th anniversary year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And again, if anyone's got any questions for Mr. Aronson, please feel free to ask those, whether on YouTube or Facebook. Again, more people are probably listening to this later, which you can also download on the Twins Daily podcast shortly after we're done here. So aside from the promotional side of things, what, in your mind, what were some of the biggest differences between the Saints as a independent team compared to as an affiliated team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest difference, and again, I don't want people taking this the wrong way. So listen to what I'm going to say. Like, the talent level is different, okay? And I'm not knocking independent baseball. I spent, plenty of years in independent baseball, but you can't compare AAA ball to, the American Association. And I think anyone in the American Association would agree with that. But the talent level is just better. And so on a nightly basis, you're just going to see cleaner, better baseball. And that was the first thing, which wasn't a surprise. Like, I knew that going in. The athlete is a little bit different. We don't control the ball player anymore, right? We paid their contract in the American Association. We do not pay them in, as an affiliate of the Minnesota Twins. So they are not, quote unquote, property of the St. Paul Saints. They are, quote unquote, property of the Minnesota Twins. So, that was a learning curve for a lot of us around here, where you just go to players and you'd ask them for certain things or whatever. Not that these guys don't do things for you, but it was a lot easier, as an independent, baseball team, because, I would just go to George, George Samus, longtime manager, and say, hey, George, can you grab a couple players to do this? I tried that with Toby Gardenhire, who, let me just say, our coaching staff was second. They were amazing. And Toby always said yes. And then after, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks, I realized, like, this is not Toby's job, right? Like, Toby is the manager of a AAA team. He's got a full-on staff below him. And so, like, hey, can you grab a guy to come out and sign autographs is not his job, like, to do that. So that took some of us a little bit of time to understand that side of things. But outside of that, there wasn't a big difference. I mean, I'd say that there was a learning curve on both our sides, the players getting used to what we do around here. I found out this real fast. Like, I thought that, like, what we do went around at minor league ballparks all across the country. I realized real fast in traveling to these other AAA, teams, they don't do what we do. A lot of their promotions are done using the video board. Not much goes on the field. They don't have the we call them masters of ceremonies, but they don't have the public address announcers like we do, where there is banter and talk and jokes and things like that. Like, nobody does what we do, and so that took a little bit of getting used to, from the players and from us, to sort of acquiesce. Like, we've never done walk-up songs around here for players. Well, the players really wanted that, and so we said, all right, well, if you're going to give to us, we're going to give to you. And so we gave that little concession that, okay, cool. You want walk-up music? We'll give you walk-up. So I think that's the area where we just had to find a little bit better footing. And as the season went along, I think we started to get on the same page, us with them and them with us. And that was great. And, look, when you deal with, whatever it was, I mean, we had 700 players come through St. Paul this year, because every time you turned around, there was another roster move. But in any group of people, right, you're going to get some great people. You're going to get some people that just, go about their business. You're going to get some people that are tough to deal with. You walk into this office, that's the way it's going to be, right? So you're just going to have that. So that was no different. The athlete itself, the baseball player itself, was no different than what we dealt with on the independent level. So.
Absolutely. And I know one of the things we talked about, or I bugged you about early in the season, simply was the number of transactions, because I mean, like, it was almost every day, at least every other day. And fortunately, when guys get called up to the big leagues, you're not necessarily responsible for announcing it, because the Twins do that. Yeah. But you still have to do a report, and this guy's coming up and this guy's going down. And what a distinction or difference between the levels.
Yeah, well, it was 34 consecutive days that there was a roster move at AAA, either a guy going up, guy going on the injured list, or a guy being optioned back down. 34 consecutive days to start our season. It was unbelievable. I think I popped a bottle of champagne on that 35th day when there was no move made. And then I joked with a couple of the minor league guys the other day that they used Sunday night, Monday as transaction day, because Monday was the universal off day. And I was like, I just knew that every Monday I was going to get an email saying 4 roster moves were about to happen, because I just was like, you guys are bored, aren't you? Because there's nothing going on. You have nothing better to do. So you're like, let's just shake it up right now. And I expect that to happen going forward, because Monday is going to be the universal off day. But yeah, look, you got used to it. I didn't expect the roster moves that were made. Neither did the Twins. Let's be honest. They didn't expect to happen what happened either. So I'm not blaming anyone, but you just had to be ready. And that comes in your off-season prep, right? You don't do prep work just on the 20, some odd guys that are currently on your roster. You've got to go further down the depth chart. The guys at AA that you are pretty sure are going to be up, the fringe guys at the major league level that you are sure at some point are going to be optioned down. I think I did prep work on 55 guys, give or take, so that you were ready when a move was made. Now, I didn't hit, on 100% of everybody that was going to be here, but that's what you spend all off season doing. You have to do that so that you're prepared for that. Because if you don't, and you're trying to play catch up during the season, you're going to bury yourself, and you just can't do that.
Well, and for those listening, having received a lot of media information from various affiliates and even major league teams, I don't think anyone puts in as much time and provides as much really useful information as what you do. I mean, you can tell you put the time in.
Yeah, Dustin Morse, the guru with the Twins, joked with me, because I was doing that in the offseason. He said, when the season starts, you're going to stop doing these lengthy press releases. And he was right, because you just don't have the time. So I really had to cut it down considerably, because, in the offseason, you have time to do the research before you put it out and whatever. But he was right. His comment in the offseason was foreshadowing the amount of moves they were going to make, and I just sort of brushed it aside, like, yeah, whatever, watch this. And then they wouldn't stop making moves, and I was like, all right, stop already.
All right, keep those questions coming in here for Sean Aronson. I do have one, but while we're on the transaction topic, number one, how many transactions was Gilberto Celestino in before he actually played in a game for the Saints?
Yeah, that is the story of legend. He had 3 transactions before On the fourth one, he finally wore a Saints uniform. The first was he was promoted from AA, mainly because, not that he didn't deserve it, but there were so many injuries that you got to remember the COVID rule was a player had to be in AAA before they could get to the major leagues. You could not skip the level because of the protocol. So they had called him up. We were in, I think it was Louisville, and he was in the lineup in that Tuesday's game. Well, that Tuesday's game got rained out. And I believe as we were going back to the hotel from the game being rained out, it was announced that he was going to be promoted to the major leagues. So he went up to Minnesota. On two separate occasions, he was optioned back to St. Paul. But in the window of him being optioned, there were injuries like the very next day in Minnesota. So they recalled him on two separate occasions. So 3 times he was sent to us, and it just became a running joke around here, like this legend of Gilberto Celestino that like he was assigned to us 3 times and had never played a game. And on that fourth time, we made a big deal out of it on social media and just had a little bit of fun of that. But that's sort of the fun things that you can do, and just have these running jokes that only those people that really pay attention are in on. So.
Speaking of moves up and down the ladder from the Twins to the Saints, we do have a question here from Joe Lawrence, and it kind of makes me want to say, whoa, but here's that question.
Blossom? Yeah. Blossom. Good.
Any chance the Twins would swap out Corey Covert for Sean for a game? Give Sean a shot at this show. And in addition to that, is that a goal you have at this point? Or are you...
Yeah, I mean, look, every broadcaster wants to be in the big leagues. I'll say this about Corey, and I know Corey a little bit. I've had the opportunity to sit down and interview him, and he is a great broadcaster. Like his prep work, his voice, like you can see why he went from Milwaukee to Minnesota and had the backing of Bob Uecker in getting the job here. Like he is very good, and I like Corey a lot. Look. I've thought about this because guys get called up, right? Players get called up, and there are some organizations that do that with the broadcaster to give them the opportunity. Look, I wouldn't turn down any opportunity. You want me to come and do a game or do a few innings or whatever, I'd gladly take it. But I also want to earn it. Like I want someone to say, you know what, Sean deserves to do a couple of innings or do a game or whatever. I was fortunate enough in Fort Myers to do spring training games, not on the Twins broadcast network, but the Twins were kind enough to allow our radio station down in Fort Myers to broadcast games. I think we're the only non-Major League Baseball affiliated radio station to be allowed to do spring training games. And the Twins were great about it. So I guess if I never did a Major League game, I could say I did Major League spring training games. But look, I'm never going to turn it down. But you got to remember too, like our schedule, pretty similar to that of the Twins in terms of how long we go. Now I've got, every Monday is an off day. But some of those are for traveling, but I would never turn it down. I just want someone to listen and say, you deserve to be here. I don't want it to be a charity thing, or I don't want it just because I'm the AAA guy. Like I want someone to legitimately say he deserves to do a few innings or whatever it is. And I'm not taking Corey's job. And I'll say this right now, if either Dick left or Corey left or whatever, Chris Atterbury deserves a shot at that role as well. He is extremely good. The knowledge that guy has is second to none. I mean, I think Chris deserves to, and if it's not with the Twins, it's not with the Twins, but he deserves a major league job somewhere on a consistent basis, more than just on a fill-in side of things.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you answered like that and showed the interest, because on Twin Spotlight, I'm sure we've got Twins front office and front office personnel from all over Major League Baseball listening to this, devouring the content. So you never know.
That's right. I'll throw it out into the ethos for sure. I've got no problem with it. But I'll say this too, and again, not I'm in any position to demand anything, because I'm not. But if I were to do it, I would like J.W. Cox, who's been my broadcast partner for 8 years now. Last year at Midway, and then every year here. And I made him my full-time number 2 this past year. I would want him and I to do the game together, or whatever it is, the few innings or whatever. Like you want to work with your friends. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. and I would want to do it with him. And so if anyone said, "Hey, we'd want you to come into the booth," I would ask nicely if JW could come along with me.
Well, that's fantastic. And also then you wouldn't have to worry about calling like a 65-year-old guy Dazzle Man. So um and I do want to point out, I think Twins fans are lucky between Bramer and his group of
Yep.
analysts with him and Corey Provis and Chris Atterbury and Dan Gladden,
Yep.
but also with you, formerly with Josh Wetzel in
Yep.
Rochester, who I
Yep.
think is fantastic, and then Tim Grubbs in
Yep.
Wichita, and I mean the talent is just so good, even
Yeah.
all the way through the system. So
Yeah.
I getting a chance on MILB.TV to watch, a lot of the various affiliates. I think we're pretty lucky. Um, last few minutes here with
Yeah.
you, and I'm barely got into topics, but again, kind of on a transaction, I would have to
Sure.
think one of the better transaction Mondays for the Saints came, I want to say July 1st, when you got both Jose Miranda and Josh Winder. Miranda comes in with a 5-hit, 3-homer debut. Winder takes a no-hitter into the 6th inning. I mean, that's a couple of pretty good players to add.
Yeah, Miranda set the bar for everybody, right? And here's the irony. Maybe coincidence. Irony is used wrong, but so his first actual game that he played was that 5-for-6 3 home run night, right? Which will live in St. Paul Saints lore from now until the end of time. And, if anyone surpasses that, I hope I'm around to watch it, but you're going to be hard pressed to do it. But if you look in his stats, that's not actually his first St. Paul Saints game. Right? So, and this becomes a weird trivia question down the road. Jose Miranda wound up playing in a game that was suspended like from May or June, something like that. So when he was here and we made it up in August, that actually shows up on the stat sheet as the first game because that game had been started back in, whatever it was, June. So that game now, like if you didn't know, you would think, oh, his first game was a pedestrian. I don't even remember if he got a hit in that. It might have been 1-for-2 or whatever it was. Oh, he went 1-for-2 in his first ever game. And it's sort of misleading and deceiving. But yeah, that 5-for-6 game with 3 home runs, the best part of that night was his last at bat when he grounded into a double play. You say, well, why is that the best moment of that? I've never seen a crowd give a player a standing ovation for grounding into a double play. They were so appreciative of what he did that night. It was unbelievable that I've never heard buzz like that in this ballpark. Even the year we won the championship, like the buzz was incredible when he stepped to the plate for the 6th time after already going 5-for-6 with 3 home runs, because you were hoping to see something that just you could tell everybody about. It really was. It was incredible. And on top of that, this is what I loved about Jose Miranda. One of the nicest kids you'll ever meet. Did every single, because the next day, everybody wanted to talk to him, right? Everybody. I had every TV station out here, the newspaper, everybody. But throughout the year, everybody wanted to talk to me, and he never told me no. He never said, nope, I can't do it or whatever. He always worked with me. And that's the type of guy that you want, a guy with talent and a guy that is going to be open and talking to the media and put himself out there. Just a super nice kid.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the first episode this off season and was fantastic. When I did the initial story on him at spring training 2020, about his relationship with Lin-Manuel Miranda and stuff, I mean, he couldn't have been nicer. Even since then, I've chatted with him a few times. And Josh Winder was on a week ago. Another just really smart, really good guy.
And just unfortunate for him that he gets shut down, and you didn't get to see that come to full fruition. And it's going to be an interesting, spring training for the Twins, and I think we can all hope that there is a spring training this year. I think it's the thing that nobody is talking about right now because what is it, 8 days from now, 9 days from now that the CBA is up. But the Twins have some very interesting decisions to make, and you've got a number of guys because right, they've got to fill holes in their pitching staff, which you figure they're going to go out, they'll sign free agents or make trades or whatever. But there are a couple of guys that they may say we would have probably brought them up to the major leagues had they not gotten hurt. But do we still start them in the major leagues? Does a guy like Winder start, in the big leagues this year? I think Yohan Duran didn't pitch enough at all last year. I think he starts at AAA again.
Right.
But there are a number of fringe guys. A guy like Drew Strotman, who they got in the trade, never showed what he showed in Durham. Like, his numbers in Durham were ridiculous. He just struggled here with the long ball. And it's just, and he had never given up home runs in his career. Granted, his career is not that long, but he gave them up at just a record clip with the Saints. And so they've got a number of decisions to make on that side of things. And it's going to be interesting. I have no inside knowledge on this, by the way. I'm sitting back and watching like everybody else. So if anyone's hoping that I've got some sort of inside info, I have nothing on this. Trust me.
Well, but even this year, I don't think anyone was expecting Bailey Ober to have the impact. He only made 4 starts in St. Paul after missing the whole previous year. Griffin Jacks has been a guy that, and Charlie Barnes too, are both guys that have been at Twins big league spring training the last couple of years. But again, obviously it took injuries for them to get opportunities, but they were pitching pretty well in AAA and earned that opportunity. So, I mean, you did see some, and maybe that's the biggest difference between independent ball and affiliated ball. Hitting wise, I don't think you're necessarily going to have huge differences. The difference will be the level of pitching, because everyone wants pitching and they're going to sign those guys, right?
Pitching and defense, I would tell you, again, we had some great defenders in the American Association, but guys go to get balls that, like, you never think they're going to get to, and they do here, and not just with the Twins organization, but one of my favorite things to do in this league is watch other prospects with other teams. Bobby Whitt Jr., I'm going to say this on your show right now. Bobby Whitt Jr., who's in the Royal system, will be a 30-30 guy within 5 years in the major leagues. He was the most electric player that I saw this year. I mean, I got a chance to see Spencer Torkelson in Toledo, Nick Prado. I mean, the Royal system had a number of good guys too.
I was going to say that Omaha team.
Yeah, they were good. But Bobby Whitt Jr. was hands down the best player I saw in this league. The first game that we faced off against them, or his first home run, I don't remember. It might have been his first game in AAA, but his first home run against us was an inside the park home run. That was his first AAA home run. And then he came here like a month, 6 weeks later, hit 3 home runs in 3 games in the first inning, 3 consecutive games. And one of those 3 was an inside the park home run. The guy is just so fun to watch. And I'm telling everyone right now, 30-30 Bobby Whitt Jr. within the next 5 years. You can book it.
But see, I saw Fernando Tatis play for, I don't remember who, down in Cedar Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's part of the fun. The first minor league game I ever went to was in Beloit, watching the Twins low A affiliate. They were playing Cedar Rapids, and Mike Trout was in the lineup. So to me, that's part of, and I was there. I was there for one of the Bobby Witt home runs that went about 455 feet. And you mentioned that inside the park home run is first in AAA. The center fielder didn't even play it all that badly.
Yeah.
And still, I think he went in standing up at home.
Yeah, he can fly. Like, if he hits the ball into the gap, you're already looking at third and maybe even thinking that he's going to try and score on it. Like, he's just so fun to watch. But that's the great thing about this, about AAA, is you get to see those guys right before they get to the bigs, and you're seeing guys on major league rehab. Obviously, I mean, here in St. Paul, we saw everybody, right? Everybody was here that could be here. And then, when we went to Joey Votto, who, I don't know, we can argue whether he's a Hall of Famer or not, but like, I got to see that guy. I got to broadcast that guy. Like, this guy is a world-class ball player. And it was, those are the things that you get to do that are so fun, at the AAA level. And look, the first year was tremendous. It was a great success. The one thing that I would like to see AAA do, and I think they will, is bring back playoffs. The joke of the 10 games that they did at the end of the year was embarrassing for everybody. But like, bring back regular playoffs. There will not be an all-star game this year. I don't know if they're going to bring that back or not, but I could do without the all-star game. But you got to bring the playoffs back. Give these guys something to fight for, to play for. and go from there. The other thing is call it something else other than AAA East. Please let's come up with better names than AAA East
Yeah.
Midwest Division. Let's do that.
Yeah. I know Jeff Johnson from the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. He just started calling the high A Central League. He just called it the Hackle, or something. I mean, that's just, they got to come up with something.
Yeah.
Okay, last couple minutes because I do
Okay.
have to get back to work, but I
Sure.
do want to do just a few things.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ask you. I know you've had a lot of great experiences in St. Paul. You've met a lot of people.
Yeah.
Where does this rank?
Yeah. So she was Miss El Salvador, Miss
Yeah.
something. I forget, something along those lines. I can't remember. Look, I have guests up in the broadcast booth all the time. And so, I mean, they throw everything from sponsors at me to, just random people like this. She was here with, I think, Univision, I think is what it was at the time. This was 18, 19. I can't remember now. They all blend together. But she was a sweetheart. She was very, very nice. Maricela, I think was her name.
Okay.
Maricela, I think.
Well, and to get the picture is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, this next slide is simply for ratings and expanding the Twin Spotlight
Okay.
network.
All right.
Michelle Young, the Bachelorette, was up there, and you offered her a rose, and
I did.
I mean, she took it.
She did. I told her that because and again, I've never watched 1 second of The Bachelor or Bachelorette until this season. Not 1 second, not anything. So I didn't know much about the show. I mean, I knew the premise of it, but I knew that she did not, win the last season of The Bachelor. So I had gotten a rose, and I told her, I said, I want to give you the rose that you should have so rightfully gotten. And so I gave it to her, and she was great, great personality. She was fantastic. The funny thing about that was I knew this was going to happen. She was on in the third inning of that game. We did a Bachelorette kind of night out here, and it was the quickest inning ever. I think the first half inning was 4 minutes long. The second half inning was about 5.5 minutes long. And that's not very long at all for people think, 9 minutes. It was not long because you're also doing play-by-play, and it just went by super fast. But she was great, great personality. I've watched every episode of this season, so interested to see how it ends for her.
Before jumping to the next one real quick, who are some of the others that you've really enjoyed? I know that you had the voice of Lisa Simpson.
Yes. Yeah. Yardley Smith, who's become a friend of mine now. She actually, they invited me to a table reading of a Simpsons episode because I'm from California, and so they were like, "Hey, the next time you're in town, let us know. We want you to come to a table read." And I did, and it was amazing. It was everything you hoped it would be. And I said this to her after. I was shocked. I was like, "You guys bring your fastball for a table read." And they do the table read. It's a 30-minute episode. The table read was 35 minutes long. And it's a crowd of people. So they've got the big table in the middle. I sat right behind Matt Groening. And then they've got like 50 people on the outside of that table up against the wall. And they want a group of people there because they want to see how the jokes play. And Matt Groening is sitting there writing notes in his script. And so at the end, Yardley says to me, she's like, "Do you want me to get that script signed for you?" I was like, "That would be amazing." She said, "I'll tell you what what I'll do for you." She said, "This is just sort of temporary script. We'll get the final script. I'll get that signed for you, and I'll send it to you." And she did. And so everyone signed it, but I'm trying to think of his name. He's one of the more, he does all the voices. I can't remember his name right now. He's probably the most famous of all of them. But anyways, Hank Azaria. Hank was the only one that didn't sign it because he was in New York, not in LA. So, but it was great. It was an unbelievable experience, and that's what this job has afforded me, the opportunity to do things I would never otherwise do. I interviewed Lou Brock. This was many years ago at Midway Stadium. He was coming through promoting cancer research or something like that. Here's a Hall of Fame guy that you're chatting with, and it's just so cool to, when I was in the Florida State League the first time, I think Gary Carter was one of the managers. I can't remember. There were a couple of other former big leaguers that were managers that you would recognize, and so that's the cool thing, is to run into people like that. But yeah, I've had all sorts of guests that have come up into the booth that you talk to. Again, some are great, some are sponsors that you have to do. some look like they've never had a microphone put in front of them before and are terrified, but
Yeah,
that's my job, is to make them feel relaxed. So
that's awesome. And I saw the picture of you with Yardley Smith up in the press
yeah.
box. And my first thought, because I'm old, is wasn't she on Herman's Head?
Herman's Head. That was the first
Yeah.
question I asked her. That's what won me over to her. Is
Oh,
like, I was like, look, I want to ask you a question. You probably get this a whole lot, and I'm sorry, let's get it out of the way now. But what was it like working on Herman's Head? And her jaw dropped. She was like, no one's ever asked me about that show. And I was like, I watched that, when I was younger. And like that, and the research that I did on her, because it wasn't 25 Simpsons questions, that won me over in talking to her on the broadcast. And she's been great. Our connection there is, she at the time was, and they're getting married, was dating or engaged to our first base coach. This was in 2018, 2017. And her production company was looking to do a reality show based on the Saints. It never, they couldn't get anyone to buy it, Netflix or anyone like that, but they were out here filming stuff. So, and I've gone, like I said, to LA, I've had dinner with her and whatever. She's a super, super sweet woman. She just such a sweetheart. I guess that's me just name dropping and talking about the circles that I walk in, but I do not live in those circles on a regular basis. So,
no, that's very cool.
yeah.
So now I'm sitting there thinking we probably both liked In Living Color
Yes.
and Herman's Head and
Yep.
The Simpsons, and
Yep.
trying to think of Good Grief.
I never jumped on that.
Okay, then I'm the bigger dork, but that's all right. All right, one more slide here. We've got just some things. You got the chance to manage a game when I believe George Samus went to a graduation.
Yeah, his daughter's graduation. Yeah, this was an exhibition game against. We did a barnstorming game every year. We played a town ball team, and I knew George was going on. Like, this was something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to just be in the dugout, right? Because as a broadcaster, you're never in the dugout. And I was like, hey, do you mind, since you're going to your daughter's graduation, if I manage the game? And George, without hesitation, looked at me and said, for sure. And it was an unbelievable experience. It really was. I think we won like 11 or 12 to nothing. It was great. I told our third base coach, Ole Sheldon, who hitting coach, third base coach, I said, you send everybody. You don't stop just because we're up big. Like I'm this is my only shot. You're sending everybody. And so we just had fun with it. And the guys in the dugout were giving me a hard time early on because I think our leadoff batter had checked his swing and they called it a swing. And a couple of our guys in the dugout were hollering. Again, it's the exhibition game, and they were like, how come you're not yelling at the umpire? Let's go. You got to get on him. And I was like, this is great. This is everything I hoped it would be and more. So I retired after that with a 1,000 winning percentage as a broadcaster. So
it's fantastic. And I did want to just include, I mean, obviously broadcaster of the year. I think you've received a lot of different awards for the work that you do, not only as a broadcaster, but I think in the front office as well. And I'm just throwing that out there. You don't even have to respond to that if you don't want. But I also did want to mention, and I know you haven't been able to do as many podcasts since the pandemic, but I would definitely encourage people to, and I know it's your Twitter handle as well, check out the podcast, The Voice Behind the Voice. It's fantastic. I mean, you've interviewed so many. I mean, not only Corey Provis and Dick Bramer and Mike Grimm, some of the local people, but I mean, people from all over the country, all over.
I've done. Here's what I'll say. Like I did Doc Emmerich, who was tremendous. The voice of the NHL up until he retired this past year. But the one I would encourage people to listen to on a national level that you're going to recognize is Joe Buck. Everybody he's such a polarizing guy as a broadcaster. Listen to that Joe Buck episode. It will, and I'm not one of those guys. I think Joe Buck is tremendous. I realize not everybody in the world thinks that. Go listen to that one, because it will show you what an actual human being he is. And I think that's what people forget about as when listening to broadcasters. Same with athletes, that you forget that they're human beings, that they have lives, that they have stories, that they are who they are. The one thing that I'll tell you about Joe Buck, and this will tell you the type of guy he is, it was the year that the Saints and Vikings were in the playoff game here. So I don't know what that was now, 18, 17. Again, they all blend together for me. But he was doing that playoff game out here. the Miracle in Minneapolis one, and we were scheduled to do it at like, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And he reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, can we do it later?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Whenever you want to do it, we'll do it." And I think it was like, he's like, "Let's just do it at 5 o'clock." And I was like, "All right, cool." And I got there and he's like, "Sorry, I had to delay this, but I'm battling vertigo right now." And I was like, "Look, if we have to cancel this, we can cancel this." And he's like, "No, I promised you I would give you 45 minutes. I'm going to sit down with you. We'll do this." So he does the interview with me while going through vertigo. Okay. Not only that, and this was, I think, the night before the game. So I think the Vikings game was on a Saturday. I think that playoff game was on a Saturday, if I remember correctly. But I always thought to this day, did he broadcast that game with vertigo? Like, you don't think about that sort of thing, but I'm like, if he did that game with vertigo, it's one of the greatest broadcasting jobs that could be done, because I don't think people understand how difficult that is when the world is spinning and you're trying to do a game. But I just had so much more respect for that guy after that. Just a truly, truly wonderful gentleman, and gave me the time. Just a tremendous guy. So I'd recommend going to listen to that one.
Speaking of giving time, I
Yeah,
thought we'd be 20 to 25 minutes,
I
and we
told
just
you.
passed 1 hour.
You can't have a broadcaster on and expect to go short. But I do want to say something before you go, and I genuinely mean this, and I'm not saying this because I'm on with you, and I'm going to make this blanket statement across. What you guys do, what you and all of your bloggers and writers do, and for that matter, everybody else out there, the newspaper folks, the TV folks out here, when the Saints became an affiliate of the Minnesota Twins, and I started doing my research on all these players, you don't understand how invaluable what you do, what the general media does, how important that is to a broadcaster like me in finding some of the stories that I then turn around and weave into broadcasts. What you guys do is exceptionally important to my job. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, to Twins Daily, to everybody out there in the media world for what you guys do. Because I just take your words and I turn it into story time on broadcast. So keep up the great work. Thank you for all that you do. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you out here at the ballpark, in 2022.
Well, I do appreciate that. My thought has been these guys don't get talked about as much as the big leaguers, but they're working just as hard and they don't have all the zeros at the end of their paycheck. So they deserve it. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Hopefully, I mean, I have a dozen more questions I could ask, and, we could spend more time on current rosters and things like that. But I'm hoping to, not only have you, but to have the other
Yep.
broadcasters from the other minor league affiliates as well. And maybe in another month, I'll have gone through all of you, and I'll call you up and see if you don't mind doing it again. But
Well, you can just put at the bottom to be continued ... That'll be a cliffhanger.
I should do that. All right. Thank you very much, Sean. I appreciate it. I know you got to get back to work. I know I got to get back to work. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Again, follow Twins Daily, twinsdaily.com on all social media platforms. And also, this podcast will be available shortly wherever you download podcasts. So, with that, thank you all for listening and have yourselves a great rest of your day. And, of course, go Twins and go Saints.